No one knows what the future holds, but if a new house is in your future, I can help from a safe distance. I'm Nick Acosta, your downtown expert, and I'm hosting safe and sanitary open houses. Nothing is different except for temperature checks at the door and masks are required. But it still smells like there are fresh baked cookies in the oven. So come on by one of my safe and sanitary open houses, and I'll say welcome home from 6 feet away.
This is Home to All, an all-inclusive real estate podcast with your host, Nicholas Acosta. Nick sits down with guests to talk about real estate and how it works. Reach him at downtown.expert on Facebook and Instagram, or his website, www.downtown.expert, or call or text him at 407-508-8809. Enjoy the episode.
Good afternoon, everybody. This is Nicholas Acosta, your host of the podcast Home to All, an all-inclusive real estate podcast, coming to you live from St. Pete on this very hot, almost summer-like day. I've got Mike with Blanchard Insurance, and you got Frank joining us back for our part 2 of Blanchard 101. Mike and Frank, welcome to the show.
Hey,
thanks for having me.
Good to see you.
How are you guys holding up there in this heat today?
Oh, man, I came out to my car yesterday around 6 o'clock and I jumped in, and I swear it felt like 110 degrees in there. And I was like, yep, summer is in full effect. And then I came into the office today, and a lot of people are off. So I'm sitting there going like, is it Beach Friday again coming up on summer? So
must be.
Yes, we are here.
Awesome. All right, with that, so let's get started, Mike. So let's go ahead, and everybody, this is a continuation, part 2, so to speak, of last week. Mike, you want to go ahead and first ask Frank some questions?
Yeah, absolutely. And this is a question that came from the audience, which is kind of a proverbial question that I get asked all the time, myself here. And a lot of people ask this question, and I'm going to give a quick take on it before Frank jumps in with, some more background on that. But the question is about, on uninsured motorist coverage, what, stacked versus non-stacked. And, what is your opinion? What is your position on it? And first, as a disclaimer, I'm never going to tell, anybody to get less insurance coverage. I'm always going to say, yes, overinsure, get as much coverage as adequately possible as you possibly can. The only disclaimer I have in my position has always been on non-stacked and stacked coverage is try to avoid suing yourself. And what I mean by that is personal injury attorneys love stacked coverage. And because if people don't really know what it is, it's basically stacking your uninsured motorist coverage. So if you have $100,000 on one car and $100,000 on another car and you go to use it, technically you add it up like in a column, it equals $200,000. If you have 5 cars, you got $500,000. From a personal injury attorney's perspective, it's a lot better if you have stacked coverage, obviously, because, the payouts, the legal fees are going to be a lot higher and the insured's going to get a lot higher. Where I've always took a position on it is you never want to be talked into using it against yourself where it's going to cause a long-term effect on your insurability. Meaning if you do have that $500,000 claim, and you don't really need to, by all means, if you have those medical bills, if you do have a permanent injury, by all means, use it. Do not use it facetiously or fraudulently, because what happens is then it's kind of like, well, Mike, why am I getting non-renewed for this $500,000 claim? Well, guess what? You only paid $1,000 into your insurance premium. The insurance company's upside down by $499,000. And guess what? When you go to another insurance company, they're going to be like, yeah, we don't think we're going to take you because of that $500,000 claim. So that's, my advice always on that has been, to number one, use it when it's needed, but try not to use it just to get a large payout and, shoot yourself in the foot at the same time. But I'm going to toss this off to Frank because it's a great question.
Man, Mike, you hit it on the head with what you said. As far as from a personal injury attorney standpoint, they do love to see that. But in the state of Florida, it's almost imperative to have uninsured motorist coverage because just because you're fully insured in the state of Florida, that just means you have 10,000, 20,000 policy. Which, if there's a serious accident, you go to the hospital, that's gone in no time. A couple X-rays and just some basic treatment, and you're way over 10,000 in the hole. So it's definitely worth having. But like you said, now that I've seen both sides of the ball, I understand it from an attorney's point of view, and I understand it from the insurance point of view. If you were to go again and file a lawsuit against your own insurance company, you're going to pay for that down the line. And as far as getting non-renewed and being very hard to place. So, I think it's very important. I do encourage clients, if they're capable of doing it, they should definitely have, stack coverage, for that worst case scenario, because you'd be amazed by the amount of drivers that carry just, basic coverage. And unfortunately, there's a lot of drivers out here that don't have any insurance at all. And, when I was working back in personal injury, you kind of look for the perfect case. You wanted, the injury needed to be there, and the insurance limits had to be there. And if it wasn't with the at-fault driver, you'd hope that your client had the uninsured motorist coverage. And when that kind of all added up, you got a great case that you can settle for your client. But also at the end of the day, sometimes you do, worst case scenario, you have to go for that uninsured motorist coverage. And if they're combating with you and you got to fight them, like you said, Mike, you have to do what you have to do. But again, if you're doing it just for a payday and you're going to go file a lawsuit against your own insurance company, you're going to have a nightmare in the long run. So you definitely hit that on the head. But I would definitely encourage, if the client is capable of doing it, definitely have that uninsured motorist coverage. And if you have multiple vehicles, you might as well go ahead and get the stack coverage. That's something I still encourage clients to do.
Yeah, and and a lot of people don't know about this too in the state of Florida, because for motorcycles, we're a non-helmet state. Florida is basically right at your own risk. It's not like, for example, New York, where you're required to wear a helmet, and a lot of motorcyclists a lot of bikers up in New York hate that. They protest it every year at Americade. But down here in Florida, it's basically right at your own risk. And the uninsured motorist coverage on a motorcycle policy is insanely high. But a lot of people don't know is if you have stacked coverage on your auto insurance policy and also extends to your motorcycle insurance, whether you carry uninsured motors or not. So if you have a motorcycle insurance and you're just carrying around, let's say liability insurance, the stacked coverage will also extend to the motorcycle insurance. And that's a trick that a lot of people use to save money on their motorcycle insurance.
Awesome. So how about this, Frank? The next question we have for you. This is regarding the no-fault change. This is close to my heart from being a personal injury adjuster for 20 years. Mike knows. How could you see it impacting the insurance world versus the legal world's ramifications and readjustments when it comes to no fault?
This is a huge issue. I know it's being proposed. I have my doubts, just because, there's industries built off of the Florida no fault law. There's so many people that have made so much money off of it. A lot of these medical providers that that see clients that are involved in accidents, and it's just, the money that's been made already. I think I don't know that they're going to be able to change it, but I think it'd be huge. It would kind of turn the legal market, or what's been going on in Florida for the past several years. It turned it upside down. I don't know if it's for the better or for the worse, to be quite honest with you. I definitely have seen where personal injury protection laws and the Florida no fault laws have really saved some people and have been like a saving grace for people who they can't afford to carry high limits. So that's been, it's something that's helped them quite a bit. But, I've seen cases where that's been the only money available for medical treatment. So, I'm kind of, I'm just skeptical to see that if it's still going to go through. I think it's kind of overdue for them to address this issue, because it's been going on for so long. But I just have my doubts, because again, I know personally several people that are involved in medical treatment, whether from chiropractors to the it's not quite, they're not called pain management clinics anymore, but just some of these, what we call soft tissue doctors that have made a killing off of this, making, $10,000 per person that walks in the door almost. And I don't know, I just don't know that they're pull it off, but it should be interesting, that's for sure.
Yeah, I agree. I agree 100% with Frank in that it's a big unknown, and it's been big business in Florida as long as I've been in the business and as long as I've lived in Florida. It's big business, and like Frank said, with chiropractors and soft tissue clinics and everything else, I mean, to readjust their entire, it's not just the insurance companies are going to be like, well, you're a PIP adjuster, but now you're a med pay and you're a BI adjuster now. Think about these clinics, all the billing, all the insurance. I mean, you're reconstructing everything and starting from scratch all over again. And nobody knows if it's going to work better. And I can tell you for a fact that rumor is in Tallahassee is that almost all of the CEOs from all these auto insurance companies have flown in and are telling DeSantis not to sign this because they understand it's big business. They're kind of like, they've come to terms with the attorneys. It's a business that works, and nobody wants to see it on the attorney side or the insurance company side turned on its head and have these huge unknowns. And I can tell you one thing that would happen is if they do sunset this and it does pass, you are going to see more PIP claims overnight flood the market than these insurance companies will be able to handle. They'll have a backlog for the next 5 years. And you will see advertisements. Get your PIP claim in now. It's got, your statute of limitations is going to run out. They're going to be, the state of Florida is going to be a one giant PIP claim. And that is what is very scary. And then thinking about all the paperwork, the last time they tried to sunset this, gosh, what's going back almost like a decade now.
Mm-hmm.
You had to get every single policyholder in the state of Florida to sign new paperwork. And the administrative nightmare that happened was phenomenal. And then consequently, it's crazy. But yeah, we could talk about that all day. But here's a great question that came in. And we're not going to ask any Frank or myself to name names here. But it is a great question, which is what companies are the toughest to battle with, meaning not wanting to pay out insurance, and who is easy to work with and will easily. And we don't have to name names here, but is there a difference between certain companies who like to settle and companies that like to fight?
It's funny you say that. That's absolutely. There are, you see this a lot. I guess the best example would be with, auto insurance. And again, we won't name names. I'm not going to promote anybody. They're not sending me any money, so I'm not going to promote anybody. But with your auto insurance carriers, you would see, God, I want to say the name so bad, but some do fight. There are carriers who, unless liability is very clear, it's not so much you send your demand for settlement letter and they reply back. There's a lot of back and forth. If liability is just questionable, and then there's a lot of auto insurance carriers that you could count on them if liability was clear. It's just a matter of 2 letters and you've settled the case for policy limits. So that's definitely a thing. I've seen it with what I do right now with medical professional liability. One of the carriers that I sell a lot of their policies, I'm actually good friends with the defense counsel who represents them. One of the attorneys who's a partner at a firm downtown, they represent this carrier, and I can tell you that these guys, it's like the special forces with some of these companies, some of these defense counsels. These guys take it personally, and they see the other side of the ball. I guess with plaintiffs' work, it can get so dirty, and some of these guys get such a bad rap just because of how it's really no longer a practice of law. Some of these attorneys have it down to like a science where they handle everything pre-suit. Everything's done through a series of letters and correspondence, and the case is settled. Everybody takes their money and walks away. And it's really the people who are affected are us, the people who are paying insurance, who are paying for all these claims. And they kind of see the abuse. So there's some of these defense counsels for some of these insurance carriers that truly will fight. And with my clients, if that's something that's important to them, I make sure and address it when we're going through quotes and looking at different carriers. The premium may be a little bit more, but again, do you want somebody that's going to roll over and pay, even if liabilities are just somewhat questionable, or do you want a pit bull, when someone who's going to get in there and fight? So that's definitely a thing. Absolutely.
Yeah, and I agree with Frank 100% again on this. And one good place that and Frank can probably back me up on this, is one good way to find out who's paying what and fighting and whatnot and settling is, I know Morgan publishes this like publicly, like every year. It's like their verdicts, and they should. I think 2020 is actually available now. And if you go through that, it will show you the insurance companies, what the pre-settlement offer was, what the settlement at trial was, or if they even went to trial. And it is really interesting. And you can go down there, and I mean, like, hey, it's a PDF file. You hit Control F, you type in an insurance company's names, it will pull up, 100 results or one result. And it's a good way to look at those amounts and who's paying what. Yes, there are some companies that are, and ask your insurance agents too. Ask, Frank or me or which ones are good at paying claims, because there is a big differential, especially here in Florida too. When you get into some of the non-standard autos, or you get into some of the E&S markets, again, we're not naming names here, but I can tell you, some of these companies are going to drag their feet, but you got to remember, they're excess surplus lines companies, largest insurance companies in the world, with a army of attorneys to convince you that, this half of what you should get is the best thing for you. And then, going back to the auto side, look at who's dominating the market in Florida. The companies who are gaining the most ground in Florida, number one, are probably handling the claims the best out of anybody.
Absolutely. That's a good way to put it.
Awesome. So Frank, the next question we have for you is, we always hear the phrase, don't have to be rich to be sued like it. When people talk about selling high limits umbrella regardless of prospect, I would like to know how often would no assets and state minimums actually get sued like they're rich?
This is the problem with that question. So just to make sure I'm getting this right, if someone has the state minimums and if someone doesn't have money, you can't. There's a kind of a derogatory thing I was going to say. I'll stay away from that scenario, but it's you can't squeeze a lemon that's already been squeezed. If there's no money to go after, if there's no assets, if somebody doesn't own anything, I mean, you can always garnish wages. That's one form. When there's somebody who they have low limits, you've taken that. That's one option. But if you don't have money, I like, you don't have to be rich to be sued like it. But if you don't have any money, what are they going to take from you? It's not worth the attorney's time. First off, to go through with all that, all the money that it's going to cost him to investigate and to go through with the case. If there's no assets, if you don't own property, if you don't have an umbrella policy, what's there to go after? Why spin the wheels? Unfortunately, this happens a lot. With back in when I worked in personal injury attorney offices, you'd see this a lot. Somebody would get, I mentioned earlier the perfect case where you have severe injuries, you have high limits, liabilities clear. Those are great, but a lot of what you see is bad injuries, low limits, and again, dry pockets, nothing to go after. So I don't know if I agree with that saying. You don't have to be rich to be sued like it. They can throw the whole book at you, but if you don't have anything to take, then I don't know any attorney personally that would take a case if somebody doesn't have any assets or anything to go after.
Yeah. I mean, a quick claim that I saw recently, a friend of mine, was her mom got ran over. I mean, walking in a parking lot, and she was in the hospital for, about a month, senior citizen. And it was, I mean, yes, the attorneys just swamped her. It was like, who, at the hospital, well, who hit you? This is going to be a great case. And they've just found out that the other party, I mean, it was a senior citizen living in a studio apartment, minimal, I think she was collecting Social Security, but, 10-20 limits, on the auto insurance. And, my conversation with them was like, you can get the attorney, I mean, to get the PIP and whatnot, but to go after the other party, I was like, what are you going to get out of this woman? I mean, there was nothing. And like, just what Frank said is, you're not going to squeeze anything out of this rock. But the next question on here is a great question, which is top ideas for landlords to prevent lawsuits. I don't understand the second part, so that second line, so I'm going to skip over this. I asked this because I hired one to respond to my ADS website, and this is kind of a weird question, but I think what they're trying to say here in this question is, how do you avoid hiring a bad attorney? And it sounds like they're looking for something like, I guess they're asking about a defense attorney or some type of business attorney to, make sure they're insured and, operating agreements and everything else is correctly. So I guess that's the general question. If you want to jump in there, Frank.
And, there's an attorney, just like an insurance agent, there's part of their job is sales. They have to sell themselves to you. They have to basically sell you on, I'm the guy for the job. They want to get one, if it's something that's being paid on a contingency fee basis, they're still going to try to sell themselves to you. So it's one thing, they're going to talk a big game. You can always request a resume, where they went to school. But one thing, a lot of lawyers use a lot. I don't know if the layperson uses as much, but avo.com, it's an attorney review site. And a lot of times attorneys use it. They'll get endorsed by people they've worked with. But with technology right now and everything available online, I would say do your due diligence and ask around, look up some of the work your attorney's done, look up, you can find his verdicts, stuff that he's worked on. But so you can start with avo.com or avvo.com. And that'll show everywhere they've worked. And you can kind of, if that's something that you want to do your due diligence on, you can reach out to people who've left reviews on there and get their opinion. And also, you should know, you can get rid of your attorney after you've hired them, but they should be somebody that, they're there for you when you have a question. They should be getting back to you promptly, not somebody who's blowing you off. You as the client, you are the boss. So, again, I would just kind of do my due diligence before hiring somebody. We all have, this being Tampa, we all have somebody that knows an attorney that can refer you somebody. But even if it's a referral, somebody you trust, it's worth it to do your due diligence. So get online, run some searches, and use some of these review sites. And I think that can kind of save you some headache down the road.
And here's, some sage advice I have, because I work in a building with a lot of attorneys, and a lot of them do estate planning, a lot of them do divorce. And I can tell you this for a fact, having a lot of friends who've, been through divorces, are going through divorces, and being friends with, a lot of attorneys as well. When you're going through a situation like that, whether you're getting sued or you're getting divorced or whatnot, you're not in the best state of mind in the first place. And it's easy to take it out on the attorney in a lot of ways. And my advice is, like, a lot of the time is like, you realize the attorney too is like, they're trying to do their job. Of course you're going to be pissed off because, but you got to look at, what's equitable, what's fair, and what's realistic. But again, it's like, you're always like, if you're in those situations, you're probably, if you're not getting exactly what you want and you're not compromising, yes, of course you're going to think they're a bad attorney and they're not doing, but you also have to balance it out and set the expectation. I tell people, like, especially you going in to speak with a family attorney, I'm like, you need to set an expectation up front of, get a realistic idea of what this is going to be. They're probably not going to be, especially in Florida, of getting you out of a divorce where you're not going to have any liabilities or owe anything back because we're pretty much a 50-50 state, or even on business, this, and let's set clear expectations. And that's, pretty much my advice for people. Is my turn here, Nick? Or
oh yeah, I was gonna ask. We got like about 5 or 6 minutes left. Which one did you want to ask? Or which the most pressing one did you want me to ask, or you to ask Frank, or do you want to talk about?
There was one on here, but I think we can actually wrap that into the first question about uninsured motorist coverage real quick, which goes back to, should they get the rider on the umbrella? Because personal umbrellas are sold for $1 million and up. Should they add the uninsured motorist to that? And I'm sure Frank will tack in real quick, but my advice is the same advice I gave before. If you need it and you're going to use it for if you're injured or permanent injury or even death or anything like that, if you're going to use it for truly what it's designed to do, yes, it's an important thing to have. If you're just looking at it going, well, now I have, 1.5 million or 1.25 million worth of free money that, because the attorney, again, personal injury attorney is going to look at that and go, yeah, that's a payday. So use it for what it's used. Don't abuse it. So I'm going to let Frank tackle that one real quick again.
That's like you said, they're looking at it as free money. Well, it's not free. God forbid something that happens and they do have to use that money. When it comes time to renewal, they're going to be paying for that for a long time. With non-renewals, and especially if they have to, if they have to file a suit against their own insurance company to get that money, if you're using it for what it's designed for, then absolutely go for it. If you can afford it. In the state of Florida, this is the Wild West. Yes, you should definitely carry it if you can, but again, use it what it's for. That is the worst case scenario. That is when it hits the fan. That's what that money's there for. So, if people, I don't know that most people carry that money, or I think they're smart enough to know that what that's for. But again, there's always an exception to that. So if somebody was going to try to use it, just to, added bonus after a claim has happened and they're trying to settle a case, then that's not that's not going to end well for them in the future when it comes to their renewals. So I think you kind of hit it on the head, Mike. Use it what it's for. But
especially on the umbrella. I mean, on the auto policy, getting another umbrella after actually using one of those claims. I look at umbrellas like this, seeing claims history over the last 20 years is like, they are really a get out of jail free card. And you will have that claim. It will be $500,000. It will be $1 million claim. Guess what? When you go to get another umbrella policy, you're probably going to get turned down by everybody, or you're going to have to pay $1 million to get the $1 million in coverage. And it's going to stay with you. Those claims, they're like, 3 years, it's off my record. Not these big claims, because they can pull it up and they may just not say it officially, but they may say like, we don't think that's a good risk, even though it was like, 5-7 years ago. Yeah, we see this $500,000 claim, because they look at it again. We all know this. Insurance companies, even though the profit margins are really thin, contrary to popular belief, especially in PNC, razor thin in a lot of cases, is how much premium did you put into that umbrella? $250, and they paid out $500,000. It would take them lifetimes to recover that, that amount of loss. But here's a great question I was reading down here, and this is one I'm really curious about that I asked Frank on the way out of here today. But do they ever sue parents whose house and basically pay for all the kid's needs, but the kid is on their own policy? So I think I understand this question. And an example, I guess I can set for Frank here would be, let's say I, own a home. I have an auto insurance with me and a spouse, and we have its 18-year-old kid who's going to college to live in the home, has their own policy. I think the question they're asking is, if we're still responsible for that child, whether paying for their college, giving them room and board, can they bridge between the two auto policies and come after me personally?
That's a tricky one. I think that would have to depend on, as if it's like a family auto policy. If he's got his own separate policy, that's not with the same carrier, I think they'd have a lot harder time doing that. But I think if the council were able to show that, again, if the kid's living with his family, if he has his own policy he pays for, but it's a family plan, maybe he pays his father, for the policy, that might be an issue. But if it was a separate carrier, I don't know that they'd be able to do that. I'm sorry, guys. I got a lawnmower going on outside of my house right now. So you guys are coming a little quiet.
No worries. That's a great question. I've seen it. There are some companies out here, and we won't name one, that is, we all know it, it's the elephant in the room here, but they actually write one car per policy. And my advice to people out there is, like, if you're going to have a household and your kid's still going to live there and go to college, and why not? And it's always the parents who are going, well, they're a whole world driver. I don't want them to affect my, I want to have an exclusion on the policy and not affect me. I just say, as long as it makes it easier when Nick can appreciate this from the claims process when you're working for Progressive, so long ago, when you get this household reports and there's 20 people living in this household and you're claiming you're the only one. It makes it a huge mess. And there's subrogation and everything else can come into play. So keep it simple as long as they're living in your house. Now, if your kid moves out and he rents an apartment in Gainesville or Tallahassee or even, Miami or wherever, go on a separate policy. It's no longer part of your household. It's harder to bridge that. But when they're in your household and you're responsible for them, from insurance purposes, it's a pretty easy bridge. And when you have companies that have those one car, one driver per policy, when they're with the same insurance company on a related policy, it's really to bridge that gap. I mean, it's not just because they have that separate policy with the same company. Because even if the companies where you have a family policy and then you have a fifth car policy attached to it, yes, it is. I've seen it. It's on claims. It's fairly easy to bridge that gap.
Right. Good.
Awesome, guys. So one last quick thing, just a positive thing to say before we end the show here on a Friday, almost summer-like conditions. Go ahead, Mike, and then Frank.
I'll let Frank go first. I got to think about mine for a second.
One positive thing to say?
Yes.
Oh, man. Thank God we live in Florida. Sometimes.
That's good. I can't top that. Positive thing to say for the week. Thank God you live in Florida. Get out and enjoy the weather and take a vacation like most of my staff is on right now, enjoying them.
All right, guys. Well, thank you guys very much for joining me again. Thank you, Frank. Thank you, Mike. And thank you for everybody welcome. And thank you for everybody that submitted their questions to the show. We'll have to figure out something. If personal injury, I remember 10 years ago when it was supposed to sunset, but they rescued it from sunsetting. But if it does sunset for the first time ever, we'll have to put an episode together to talk about that to see how it's going to play out, because it'll be interesting to see.
Yeah, I'm crossing my fingers everything stays as is, but
right, me too. Well,
it's going to make a nightmare for everybody here.
Well, 10 years ago, I would say that we could have sunset it, but now that the state of Florida has a lot more full-time residents and we're growing at a rapid rate, that I think it definitely should stay. Personal injury, that is.
Absolutely.
Yep.
I concur.
All right, guys. Well, you guys have a good weekend. Everybody, thank you for listening, and we'll talk to you later. All right? Take care, Mike and Frank. All right, take care.
Take care.
This has been Home to All, an all-inclusive real estate podcast. Find Nick on Facebook and Instagram at downtown.expert, and also his website, www.downtown.expert, or call or text him at 407-508-8809. Thanks for listening.
Don't spend hours or days looking for your new home. Let a downtown Central Florida expert guide you. I'm Nicholas Acosta, and I'm here to welcome you home. Being a Florida native, I know how exciting, stylish, and convenient the downtown lifestyle can be. From the nightlife scene in the heart of downtown to the natural beauty of Florida. I'm Nicholas Acosta, and I'm here to welcome you home.